Wow, that's a hard act to follow. And I don't think I can belly dance, but I could give it a shot. I want to start off by thanking TEDx and all of you for being here this morning to listen to a message about which I have great, great passion. I thank you for that. I'm John Zuby-Zaretta. I'm professor of English and director of the honors program and director of faculty development and former dean of undergraduate studies at Columbia College. And last year, I had the great, great delight and lucky fortune to have been selected by the Carnegie Foundation and the Council for the Advancement and Support of Education as the U.S. Professor of the Year for baccalaureate colleges. Thank you. It's the first time ever in the state that anybody from the state of South Carolina has been selected for that award, so I'm very proud of that. And if you've driven up and down North Main Street any time recently here in Columbia, you've probably noticed the banners that are on every light post on both sides of the street up and down North Main Street. And one of them has a picture of me on it. It makes me look like FBI's most wanted. And another one has a picture of one of my beloved students, Diana Lind, who graduated last spring. And she was selected by the National Collegiate Honors Council as the National Honor Student of the Year. She's actually the third student from Columbia College who has received that award in the 8 years that the prize has been given. Something else I'm very proud about. Now, the news you often hear about higher education in the media is always bad news. And you know, there's that episode in Star Trek where Scotty, the engineer, is down there in the bowels of the Starship Enterprise somewhere, and he calls up to Captain Kirk up on the bridge because their captain keeps asking for more and more warp speed. And Scotty calls up and says, "Captain, Captain," I have a terrible Scottish accent, "Captain, Captain, I don't think she can take much more. She's about to blow, Captain." Well, that's me. I'm about to blow. Because I'm really sick and tired of hearing all the negative press about higher education, when in fact, in my own experience, as a director of faculty development and as somebody who's passionate about teaching and learning, and somebody who has had the great fortune of being invited to lead workshops and give keynote presentations all over the world on the value of teaching and learning, I see a very different picture. I hear and see a very different story. And I want to share some of that story with you today. The Carnegie Foundation U.S. Professor of the Year Award is one that has been widely celebrated on our campus. And I'm very, very proud of that. But I want you to know that the award is not my award. It's the award of my colleagues. It's the award of the City of Columbia, of the state of South Carolina. And in fact, it's your award. Because teaching and learning are fundamental to building a society that is passionate about lifelong learning. And that's what we're dedicated to as educators. But those are stories that are hardly ever told. All you hear is all the bad news. The Carnegie Foundation Award privileges many, many characteristics. And I know how arduous it is to make those selections because I was asked to be on the selection committee for this year's round of recipient. And it's agonizing to make that decision. But I can tell you that the #1 criterion that's used in selecting the U.S. professors is the professor's impact on students. What difference does teaching make in the lives of these students? How are students' lives transformed by education? And I'm very, very, very happy that Columbia College and that our students have been recognized in so many ways by this award. But not all the news is good. It's not always so heartening. And you can see that when I returned back from the award ceremony in Washington, D.C., and I arrived at the Columbia Airport, CAE, there were a number of students who were waiting for me at the airport. And these were students who showed up because they were proud of not only their professor, but of their college and of higher education in general. And they put up a big roar at the airport, and the TSA people were walking around with their hands on their guns, wondering if this was a takeover of the airport. But in fact, it was not. It was just a celebration of good teaching and deep transformative learning. And I was just in tears practically when I arrived at the airport. But remember that not all the news is good. But I'm here to tell you a different story, because teaching transforms students' lives. I know, because I'm a living example. My parents are Cuban immigrants, and we grew up in Harlem, New York City. And when it came time for me to go to college, I was resolved that I was not going to go to college. But we sacrificed. I worked at Florida Power and Light Company at nights while I went to school at Miami-Dade Junior College. And there I met a professor named Margie Buer, and she took a great interest in me. And when it came time for me to graduate with my bachelor's degree from a higher university in Miami, she stepped up to the plate. But the story is somewhat tragic, because I was not going to be able to go to graduate school, and she was not going to allow that to happen. And tragically, and coincidentally, that very same year that I was getting ready to graduate, her eldest and beloved son, Michael, was killed tragically in a motorcycle accident. Sorry, I still get emotional about it. Margie used some of the life insurance and settlement money to help send me to graduate school. And it changed my life, and that's why I'm here today. And you know what? There are many, many, many stories just like that one out there, but they're never told. All you hear is about failing universities. Higher education is a disaster. Teachers aren't teaching, students aren't learning. I'm about to blow. The stories I can tell you are totally contrary to that story that you read about and hear about in the public eye and in media all the time. Another story, for example, is Homa Hassan's story. Homa was the student that I asked to introduce me at the awards ceremony in Washington, D.C. for the U.S. Professor of the Year. And Homa comes from a family of three girls. All of them went to Columbia College. All of them have graduated from Columbia College, and all of them are doing remarkable things in their lives. Their lives have been changed by education. Homa introduced me in Washington by telling her own story about her life, about how her life was changed through the agency of good teaching and caring education. She told a story about how after her father died suddenly, and she was very, very close to her father, so the event was catastrophic for her. It was traumatic. And she took a few days off from classes, only a few. And when she turned up back at the college, she came straight to my office, and she looked terrible. Not something you often say to a young lady. And I said, Homa, you look terrible. Sit down. I could tell she hadn't eaten in days. And I grabbed some of the snack food and the yogurt and the fruit that I had brought with me that day. I sat her down and I said, Homa, you have to eat. And you will eat now. And she ate, and she was replenished both intellectually and emotionally. And she told that story, and of course, being a softie, I cried during the ceremony and embarrassed myself, and I had to apologize to the audience in D.C. about that. But let me tell you, these stories don't often get told, and the news isn't always very good. For example, after the awards were given, there was a blog entry, several blog entries in the Chronicle of Higher Education, which featured a story that was titled, U.S. Professors Put Students in Charge of Learning. And the blog entries were, in some cases, vicious. And this is just one example, not so vicious, but this person was saying, putting students in charge of learning, forget it. You educators are wasting time, you're wasting money. Tell the students what they need to know, test them on it, weed out the ones who don't get it, and move along the ones who do. End of story. Also, he went on, or she went on to say that this whole notion of engaged learning is, in this country, gone way too far. We're wasting too much time, too many resources on all this junk called active learning, problem-based learning, critical thinking. Get over it. Teach them the facts and use the money in a better way. The blog continued, saying that the responsibility of learning is not the professors, it's the students. You may, if you're clever, have already noticed the contradiction, between the last statement and the first statement, right? Well, that's the kind of press that higher education seems to get these days. I'm here to tell you a very different story. And at the awards ceremony, again, Homa introduced me, and that's Homa sitting right there. And I kind of fantasize, I can't help it, thinking that she's sitting there with her head on her hand, with that look on her face, with me up there in tears, thinking to herself, his message is the message that ought to be getting out everywhere, that higher education does make a difference. We do change lives. We do transform people. Why isn't that story told? Now, all of you remember, I'm sure, the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And this is the model of education that I think the public seems to have in mind when they think about the impact of higher education. Remember the economics professors up there lecturing about, what was it? Voodoo economics? And all the students are sitting there like this. And in fact, I think it was Ferris had his head down on the desk in a pool of drool. Okay? I'm here to tell you, in the work that I do at Columbia College, and the work that I do in faculty development and teaching and learning circles, again, all over the world, I see a very different picture of higher education. I see many professors working their hearts out, right, out of their chests and giving it to the students and saying, this process of being educated is important. It matters. And we're here to encourage you, to support you, to care for you, and yes, to transmit knowledge and skills, but transmission of knowledge and skills is not enough. We need to engage students in the deep, transformative, lifelong process of reflection and critical thinking and problem solving and really applying their learning across disciplines and between what happens in the classroom and what happens outside the classroom. I see that everywhere happening in higher education in an increasing level. Why isn't that story being told? I'm about to blow. I see it very differently. And so I want to engage you in a couple of exercises because after all, what kind of an engaged, creative, active teacher would I be if all I did was lecture here to you today, right? So I'm going to ask you to participate with me in some interactive exercise. Can I get the lights up in the house here for just a moment? I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to look at these images of the U.S. penny. Now, mind you, all of you have handled the penny hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of times. You would think that after having experienced that piece of knowledge, that you would know it hands down, no question, right? Take a look at these images because you know what? Only one is the U.S. penny. Only one. And because I'm not a cruel teacher, I am making it a little bit easier for you, and I've eliminated at least 2 of them. Okay, just to give you a head start. So, 15 seconds, figure out which one is the penny, turn to your neighbor, and see if you can reach a consensus of opinion. Go. Do as I say. I'm the teacher. Okay, let me get you back. Let me get you back. Okay. Yoo-hoo. Time out. Time out. Come on back. Come on back, as they say in the trucking business. Come on back. Come on back. Now, actually, remember me? Come on back. Thank you. Now, actually, that response, that is your unwillingness to come back to me as the authority of knowledge, is a response that I and good teachers count on all the time. Because it shows you that once you engage students in the process of learning, in the process of collaboration, in the process of learning from each other, not necessarily from me, you can't get the classroom back. They go out of control. That's a positive response. That's what education is about. So I have another quick 15-minute exercise in the last minute and a half that I have. I'm going to move on to that. No? You don't want to leave without knowing the answer. Fair enough, fair enough. I won't torture you anymore. Actually, the answer is 1A. Okay, I hope you learned some lessons about engaged learning and active teaching from that little exercise, okay? That's the story that isn't being told. Here's another one. I'm going to use myself as content material here. It could have been math, could have been physics, could have been English, could have been dance, could have been history, but it happens to be me, okay? Getting to know something about me. John Z. has taught college for more than 35 years. And because of my Cuban heritage and Spanish language, I earned a Fulbright in Chile. Or John Z. has been awarded 6 gold medals and 4 silver medals in U.S. National Whitewater Championships. One of these statements is not true. Which one? 15 seconds, talk to your neighbor. Okay, come on back. Make it a little quicker this time. Okay, the answer actually, because we're running out of time, was the second one about the Fulbright. I have been teaching college for more than 35 years. Did anybody say that can't possibly be true? Thank you! I started when I was 5. And I have won 6 gold medals and 4 silver medals in national championships. All right. So I want to end by just showing you one last photo. This is the end of the awards ceremony at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., where there were many, many dignitaries and legislators there, none from the state of South Carolina, I might add. And I think that this picture tells you something about the relationship between good teachers and great students. These students all were there at the ceremony in Washington on their own dime, okay? Because they wanted to celebrate. So I hope that the next time you see all this bad press about higher education, maybe you'll put a big X on that news and instead help me figure out how to keep that Starship Enterprise from blowing up. Thank you.